Welcome to the March South. We're here today on a tabletop review to do my first product review. The reason I'm doing this first product review on Rippler decoys is because it solves a problem for me. And I'm really hoping that this also solves a problem for other people. And that problem is looking for a decent rippling decoy. Motion's important for duck hunting, and you'll see a lot of people trying to sell you their specific decoy. I'm here to create a scoring system and test it on these decoys as well as review them so that hopefully people get the information that they need to make an informed decision. That's really the goal here. The other goal is to hopefully find myself some really good product, and also have some fun doing it, because making these videos is fun for me, but for the most part I'm doing it to help me find a replacement for something that I feel has been a little lacking. Before we jump into the categories and we start talking about the actual decoys themselves, I'm just going to do a quick disclosure. As of today, I have no subscribers. I have no relationship with either Avian-X, who makes these decoys, or Mojo. They don't know I exist. All of the decoys that I have are purchased with my own money. I have no Patreon support. I have no sponsors of any kind. I'm just a guy making videos, hoping that these videos will help someone else, and also entertain myself while doing it. So without further ado, let's just jump into the actual review itself. Now, as I said, I had been using these for a while. These Mojos are one of the cheapest decoys out there, and they were very attractive to me at the time, but they have not performed well for me. And I'm not talking about I haven't killed ducks over them and I'm blaming that on these. No, my shooting is bad enough as it is, so I'm pretty sure that did most of the damage for me. But at the end of the day, the durability of these has been lacking. The mechanisms just don't last. That'll be one of the categories that we kind of discuss here in a minute, and I'll go through it. But we gotta start at the beginning. We're gonna start at cost, because cost is one of the most important things for most consumers. I mean, nobody wants to spend a ton of money, but nobody wants to buy something that's cheap and isn't going to last. So first and foremost, cost. It is a relative scale based on the range. So this being the cheapest offering out there, and the Airboss Wagger being at least the most expensive Rippler that I know of right now, at $139, the range is between $40 and $139. The Avian-X Shaker sits somewhere right in the middle of that. It's a little bit more on the expensive side at $89.99, but scoring wise, the cheapest gets a 5 and the most expensive gets a 0. So that puts the Mojo Rippler at a 5 and the Avian-X at a 2.5 for their cost scores. Pretty self-explanatory. It's just based on the MSRPs and not what you can find it at on sale or some specialty shop. That's just what the MSRPs are stated at on the website from the company. So second category is initial quality. So initial quality is kind of interesting. Almost all of my categories are just going to be a 0 to 5. 5 being the best and 0 being the worst. Initial quality is kind of one of those, it's either acceptable or it isn't. You're not going to do phenomenally on initial quality, and mostly because if you pull it out of the box and it looks like it's supposed to and it does what it's supposed to, you get a 3. I don't think there's a way to be exceptional in that category, and unless you were completely surprised that now there's just a bunch of flocking on a decoy you didn't expect it to be flocked on, but that's probably a mistake at the plant in the first place. So I have a hard time giving a score higher than a 3 on initial quality, and it kind of works out with that, so making it so that the rest of the categories don't have a weighted average, and having 6 total categories also helps, so that any one score isn't going to overly dominate. Like, this isn't going to dominate every single other one because it scores 1.5, and that 1.5 just kind of carries it. Anyway, these decoys both worked out of the box. The problem wasn't the initial quality with this, and the problem seems to be not there, or I haven't seen any problems with these yet, but initial quality is acceptable from these as well. So they both get 3s. There's not much more, at least, to talk about on initial quality because I didn't see anything that was broken. Durability is where things get interesting. The score right now for the 2 decoys that I'm kind of pseudo reviewing at the same time, because I know this one and I'm looking at the Avian-X, is going to get interesting because of the fact that this durability score is known for the Mojo but an unknown here. Because there's no score on it, it doesn't seem to affect the score at all, the overall average score, because it's not filled in. It's not a 0 and it's not a 5, so it doesn't seem to skew it very much, but in the end it seems to work out. But this, on the other hand, because I have bought 3 of these decoys and 5 of the motor mounts, and at least 3 of the 5 motor mounts have broken at any one time, and it's been hard to keep 3 motor units going at the same time, this durability score gets a 0. And it's not like it took like 2 years for them to start breaking. It was like 2 or 3 hunts in. I think my first one, I saw it kind of like lazily flopping around because it usually moves fairly quickly and shakes very fast and has a tiny ripple. But it was just kind of like rolling around. And when I took it apart, one of the motor mounts in this had separated, and everything was still functioning except for the fact that the motor was no longer actually constrained up here, and so the weight was just kind of like slowly flopping around because the motor was moving as it was trying to spin the weight around it. And that was my first experience, and then it only went downhill from there, because shortly after that first one broke, the next one broke, and then the next one. And it's just been a constant struggle to keep the 3 decoys that I have running. And so from a durability perspective, this gets a 0. I don't believe that this is acceptable. Now, I remember posting a review on this on Mojo's website. Hopefully other people kind of were cautioned away from it, and Mojo has since come out with a Rippler 2, but I don't know what kind of changes they actually put into the motor unit in the Rippler 2. On top of that, they're only offering a butt and not a body decoy anymore. Not sure what that's all about, but as of right now, you can't really find this on the shelves anymore. And durability wise, you don't really want it anyway. It might be cheap, but it isn't worth it if you have to buy a $25 motor unit every single time this goes out, and this $40 decoy becomes a $65 decoy. So for right now, this is unacceptable, and this is unknown. Hoping this is as good as it looks. We'll get into the rest of the categories here in a minute to kind of prove my point, but I'm hoping this durability, and I really am hopeful that it will do very well. Now, next category is performance. Performance-wise, this is acceptable. It makes ripples and it floats, does what it's supposed to. But it makes really small ripples, and they don't propagate very far. So from the standpoint of how much area of coverage it has, it's not very big. But this is acceptable because this has been a very popular motion decoy, and for a long time it was probably one of the only ones out there. Now the Avian-X Shaker, on the other hand, has a bigger weight and it has a slower motor speed, so it moves significantly more in the water than the Mojo. These waves propagate farther and transfer more energy and cover a larger area, so you can put more non-motion decoys within a small area and get more motion out of it because the waves are reflecting from this off of this other decoy and then moving it. So that's awesome. From a performance standpoint, this is acceptable and this is exceptional. This is a 3 and this is a 4. Now for it to be a 5, I really don't know what generates a 5 yet. When I see it, I'll know it. But for now, this is definitely much better than this, but I don't think it's the best thing out there yet. So that's why this gets a 4. Appearance. In terms of appearance, this leaves a lot to be desired. And we're not talking about initial quality when it talk about appearance. We're talking about the feel of the decoy, the paint scheme, the accuracy of its anatomy, things like that. And from that perspective, this does okay, but it's not great, and the paint isn't all that good. The texture is off. It doesn't really look like feathers. It just kind of looks funny. I don't really know how to describe the texture on this. And the paint is kind of meh. I mean, it's a cheap decoy. It does what it's supposed to. But on the other hand, when you look at the Avian-X Shakers, these are much, much more realistic. They look just so much better. They even put the wing patches on. They've got a slight iridescence to the black back here. The head has a slight amount of purple on the back on this Drake. So, I mean, like, looking at these two side by side, this is significantly better than this. And I gave this a 2 because it looks like a duck, but just barely. I mean, I've seen some 1980s decoys that look better than this thing, to be entirely honest with you. So I gave this a 2. It's not really good. It's kind of subpar for a decoy. This, on the other hand, got a 4 because I believe that there are some decoys out there that aren't motion that don't look this good. I mean, this thing looks awesome right out of the box. I mean, they all did. In fact, I think I bought this as a blem. And if this is what they consider a blemish, I don't know what's actually blemished on this. It might have just been the fact that I bought it from Midway out of an open box or something, but I can't even tell what's blemished on it. So, I mean, appearance on these is great. I couldn't really be happier with it. Does it get a 5? No. And I think that you could really argue that this really is a 3.5 because it doesn't have flocking. But I don't know. I'm pretty happy with the 4 for now. I'll leave the 4 there. I'll kind of give it to them. Now, final categories features. Features wise, this decoy right here has the bare minimum features that you would expect out of a rippling decoy. It's got a loop for the line. It has, it floats. This is just the bare minimum. This is what you would expect, right? Now, from this decoy on the Avian-X Shakers, they're foam filled. So this one is hollow. If you put a hole in this with a BB, an errant BB from, shooting too close to it, depending on where it gets hit, this might sink or damage the internal mechanism. That is less likely with this. This won't sink, and you're less likely to damage the internal mechanism because you have to pass through the foam to get to it. I don't know how high density it is. I'm not going to say they're bulletproof. I remember seeing something online of somebody saying they're bulletproof. I doubt that. I also don't want to pay to find out. As curious as I am, and as much as I would love to just water swat one of these to see what happens, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to kind of take their word for it that it's better. So in terms of features, this one is better. It's a little bit better protected, and it's got a little bit nicer swivel on it than the other decoy offering, the Mojo. So I think it gave this gets a solid 3.5. It gets a half point because I don't think anything of the features is really that much better. Although you could argue that the foam filling makes it a 4, but I've kind of already given it a little bit of leeway on the appearance. So I gave it a 3.5 here because there are other offerings out here that are foam filled, so it's really not that unique. So I gave it a half point increase over the standard. Now, overall score for the Mojo, which for better or for worse is the baseline here, ended up at a 2.7, which it's pretty close to the average or the industry standard of a 3, but durability and appearance are the two reasons that it isn't a 3 or higher. The durability certainly kills it. I mean, it really hurts it. Getting a 0 is really hurting this thing because that cost, that number 5 in there really helps out, but because it lacks in other categories pretty severely compared to the other offerings that I know of, or at least the other one that we're comparing it against right now, this doesn't do very well. Now, in spite of not having any durability data on any of these, the score is a 3.4, and that's because of the feature score, the performance, and the the features, the performance, and the appearance. So that's why these end up with a 3.4, which is good. You know, from an overall perspective, I believe that this is a good score, even though we don't have durability data yet. I'm really hopeful based on the performance testing that I did, which I kind of forgot to mention that I did put it into a container and have it run for a while. And I do remember these running for quite a long time by themselves, but I don't remember them running for at least 8 hours. I remember them being like 6, depending on how cold it was, you know, and batteries get degraded and turn when it gets cold outside. So I remember these being pretty good. But this ran for almost 10 hours before it really started to slow down and start not quite doing what it was doing before. So it might last longer than that 9-hour mark, 9.5-hour mark, but it started to slow down. So I was like, all right, it's clearly showing that it needs to replace its batteries. So I'm really hopeful that these decoys do as good as their initial quality kind of, or the initial assessment sort of lets on. I believe the 3.4 is justified for the Avian-X, and I believe the 2.7 is justified for this because of the durability. I mean, you guys let me know in the comments whether or not you believe that my criteria is fair, whether or not you disagree with anything that I've stated here. And you know, I'm really looking forward to testing out these decoys, and I hope they perform as well as their initial looks are. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here and kind of just say thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time, and you'll get to see what the durability of these Avian-X shakers is.